is a magical operation of maximum importance. The initiation of a new aeon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood.
The tavern's closing. Best be on your way, stranger.
What? No mug of ale for a weary traveller from distant Corhagen? I can reward you well, for I am of noble blood.
I stay open for no man in these dark times. Things come with the night that no sane man would welcome.
And so I left, cold of heart and soul, forced to the road and the long, bitter night.
That's it!
Kain, he's had a bit of a day. First he was denied an ale and kicked out the pub after his long trip from his hometown. To add insult to injury, with not being allowed that final drink, he's murdered the moment he sets foot in the street. You'd think that would be the end of it, but no, he's brought back with the promise of revenge against his murderers, which he managed off relatively quickly as RPGs go. But alas, he's not allowed to rest, for he's been cursed as a vampire. To finally gain peace, he must bring balance to Nosgoth by killing the guardians of the pillar, which have now become corrupt. So off poor Kain goes on a quest to restore the pillars and hopefully find peace, unless a better option doesn't pop up in the meantime.
Beware the unspoken.
Legacy of Kain Blood Omen was developed by Silicon Knights and published by Crystal Dynamics, and originally released for the PS1 in November of 1996, and is the first part of a 5-part series continuing with the PS1 title Soul Reaver, its sequel Soul Reaver 2 on the PS2, along with Blood Omen's odd alternate timeline direct sequel in Blood Omen 2, before finally bringing it all together in Defiance, also on the PS2, which itself doesn't actually have a conclusive final ending. But with the new remasters due for Soul Reaver line, there is always a slim chance they may finally conclude the tale properly. Weirder things have happened, but here we are right at the start with a game most different from all that came after. Many would say Blood Omen is Zelda Vampire Edition, and it does carry a few things across: the top-down view of the old ones, and a world map that you slowly gain more access to as you acquire new powers and weapons. You retain these weapons, powers and items from finding and completing dungeons, but here things are slightly reversed. On the most part, the item you wish to gain from the dungeon isn't the reward at the end, rather you gain it upon entering the dungeon and then must use that new item to get through it. It's a wonderful reversal of what we are used to in other titles, and I really enjoy that element. The dungeons themselves are so varied, and not just visually, because of the new abilities you need to use, and then later in the game, especially around boss type characters, you need to jump between various transformations and spells to reach the end. I felt this was a part of the game that it does really well. Another neat trick in most dungeons is the use of light, especially when highlighting switches to hit. It really helps with navigating without spelling everything out. There are a lot of powers and weapons to acquire. You will need a mace to smash big boulders, and axes to chop through trees. Thankfully these are fun weapons in their own right too, but probably not as satisfying as the flame sword and finally the Soul Reaver. There is also a collection of armour that gets increasingly ridiculously powerful, from simply warding off simple enemies to full on automatically draining blood from enemies around you. The really groovy part of the game isn't the weapons though, it's the powers, and there is a great fun list of them. They are split into two camps. There are the transformation powers and then the spells. Your first transformation is a bat. This is the game's version of fast travel. You can find these obelisk type structures around the world. Once activated, they are like beacons, points on the map you can fly straight to in bat form, and a few locations you can't visit without being in bat form to begin with. Not that long later, you gain the ability to change into a wolf, which is faster on foot and can jump over obstacles or up to higher out of reach areas. You can also gain the ability to look human. With this you can learn things from unsuspecting folk and sneak through fortified areas to unlock gates, etc. And there's the nifty mist ability that lets you walk through locked gates and pass through dangerous areas you couldn't go on foot usually, like the dank swampy area. They're all cool in themselves, but we also have spells, anything from shooting projectiles and lighting dark spaces to encasing yourself in a thick shield, which comes in unimaginably useful in almost all sections of the game. Do not forget you have this, or be afraid to use it, to cheese areas. It works against bosses too. One of my favourite abilities, and one that I had a fun dungeon to use it in, is the ability to control enemies around you. The enemies even have their own attacks. Using them to kill other enemies and reach areas you can't to unlock the pathways forward was just great fun. The controls for this juggernaut of abilities is simple enough when you can blooming remember what does what. I always forget. Triangle brings up your transformation menu, R1 and R2 bring up your items and spells quick menu, square attacks with your weapon, X uses your equipped item or spell, yeah you can only equip one at a time, and circle lets you drink the blood from enemies close to death, peasants sleeping peacefully in bed, or poor hapless souls chained to the walls of various locations. And I will admit they pop up in more places than you would think, making you question many of the denizens of Nosgoth. I think a lot of the population deserves what's coming in all honesty. Even a local brothel has a blood-soaked torture room. I will admit the actual physical attacks are simple little combos. Each weapon has its own. Spinning around with the twin axes is rather fun, but some may find in general the hack and slash part a bit basic, and could be just a means to an end when everything else is so cool, and more than make up for any shortcomings in this area. But what really brings this game together and elevates it to something greater is the audio and tale to tell. The background music is great in itself, but it's the voice acting that makes it a winner. Kain wants to tell you everything, and he does not hold back. Every item, new location or event, and Kain will rabbit on, sometimes for a decent amount of time, in the most luxurious, flamboyant way. He's almost a poet in his descriptions of the way various items destroy his enemies. And it's an absolute joy to listen to. It never gets old, although the often repeated "help me kind sir" from the chained walled victims, and Kain's signature catchphrase can grate for some in time, I'm sure. But let's listen to a couple.
I awoke to the pain of a new existence, in a dank womb of darkness and decay. The sanctuary spell enables me to travel to my crypt, where the soil of my grave provides me respite. I often resort to this when I am weak and need nourishment.
This ancient vial bears with it a dark gift indeed, for with it my life force is increased. These ancient symbols of power contain raw magical energy that increases my own capacity to summon energy for the spawning of spells.
The world had changed to my eyes. I had not expected such cruelty from the light, for in the embrace of the sun I could find no comfort, only malice. This would change in time for the worse, along with other things. When rainfall comes, vampires are wise to find shelter from its acidic touch.
Hunger and weakness are no bar to vengeance's call. I would find my slayers and send them back whence I came. What trickery is this?
There he is! Kill him! Massacre! If we put you down once, we could do it again.
Their sneering faces were forever etched upon my memory. I had crossed death for this moment. My mind was empty save for one thought. I would kill.
There is no greater release than that from vengeance sated. With my assassins dead, my quest was over.
Now just imagine having Kain as your inner monologue voice as you go about your everyday life, doing normal everyday things, like making a coffee. But maybe hold back when using the phone though, eh? Sometimes too much information is simply too much information. The story to Blood Omen is an engrossing one that continues to surprise, bringing in interesting new characters and locations as it continues, with those flashes of story from the opening being slowly unravelled and explained the deeper you go. Each Pillar Guardian has their own story to tell. Malek's questline is a multi-part affair that needs you to find an ancient vampire living deep in a swamp to get past. Later there's a king with a tale of a terrifying toy maker who tricked him and put his daughter into a fairy tale style coma simply from a lock of her hair. There are twists and turns of other characters and some really interesting developments in the later half that I won't spoil here. Suffices to say it's well worth the journey, with even a bit of wiggle room at the end where one way will end the story permanently while the other begins the epic tale woven throughout the whole of the continuing Legacy of Kain series. I loved this game back in the day, and I'm happy to say I love it just as much, or maybe even a little bit more now, knowing the great epic tale it starts in earnest here. I can see how the janky edges could put people off. Some will always go straight for Soul Reaver, and I get that, but to bypass this beauty really would be a crying shame. My only complaint is the FMV is a little off on a big telly, but this is mostly rectified with a smaller display like the EXP and the Super Pocket, and I would say this really is a perfect partner with the handheld, as it's as much an interactive living novel as it is a video game, if that makes sense. Buy it, play it, love it, fall in love with the Legacy of Kain series and jump down the deep rabbit hole fully. That's what I say, because do you know what? I still believe.
I've seen my plan, vampire, as I've seen your destiny. The future says you die.
But I am dead.